Welcome to the Red Rose Film Club, a movie podcast that examines the wide world of cinema through a perpetually lefty pinko comedy soy boy cuck and Tifa super soldier filter. But more specifically, we love movies and want to create a podcast that would appeal to the disparate tastes of our liberal, leftist, socialist, communist, Marxist, and Leninist friends. Red Rose Film Club is for leftists of all stripes who don't know what to talk about at parties other than movies and politics. My name is Craig. I work in public education and am passionate about social justice and workers' rights. And I don't like it when them anti-union boys done scared off all the game. And I'm with...
Hey, I'm Hal. You're not getting any accent work out of me today.
Me neither, apparently.
In 2024, I'm switching it up and taking it back to the basics. I'm a socialist trying to grapple with our world by reflecting on it through art, theory, and a little bit of the will of the people.
Kill the poor! Kill the poor! Kill the poor!
So, Craig.
Yes.
I obviously lied about silly accents today.
Hey.
But aside from that, what other pop culture are you getting into these days?
I watched two Werner Herzog movies that I'll just say new to me, both of them, because I had seen Fitzcarraldo, but like as a teenager, like probably 15, 16, like just getting into movies, and I remember almost nothing, and certainly was probably not old enough to appreciate all of it. So I watched Fitzcarraldo, which was fucking awesome.
So good.
Yeah, I love that movie. Like that was one of the ones that I was like, I feel those ones that just connect immediately. I was like, this motherfucker made this for me. And then, yeah, I loved it beginning to end. Fucking Klaus Kinski is a weirdo. I really want to do like now a double feature of Burden of Dreams and My Best Fiend. Have you seen either?
I have not.
My Burden of Dreams is like the making of Fitzcarraldo, kind of shot like day by day, as they're all kind of driving each other insane, trying to like fucking pull the boat up a mountain. Yeah.
Like, them actually performing the task that is depicted in the movie as impossible.
Yeah, which, like, okay, so if you haven't seen Fitzcarraldo, it is a very, like, interesting, almost like meta movie, too, because it's about this kind of artiste type who is obsessed with bringing the opera to the jungle, so much so that for a whole bunch of other reasons, he decides his easiest route to not fame, but money to afford his opera house is to drag his steamboat over the top of a mountain. But the meta portion is that, like, Werner Herzog is that fucking obsessive weirdo that literally dragged a steamboat over a mountain for this thing. And it's like, yeah, it's just kind of a commentary on the man himself making it.
Yeah, not CGI.
No.
Practical effects.
Practical
effects.
Oh, and fucking really good practical effects too, because the tension of the like those makeshift like wooden, I don't know what the fuck you call those things, but like they make wooden like turnstiles to help pull it up.
Right.
And there's like so many long shots of just the wood like fucking creaking when those ropes are pulling. But goddamn, it was great.
This and Sorcerer, I think, would be like a really good double feature.
There was a specific part in the movie where it like just something, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it struck me as like that exact same thought. Yeah. I didn't have anything to add. I just realized I got excited because I had a similar thought.
Yes.
And then the other one,
Synchronicity.
the other one I saw was Nosferatu the Vampire, which scary as fuck,
right?
Really creepy.
It is. Wow, I really like vampire movies.
Yeah,
I would say it is, if not my favorite, in strong contention for my favorite.
Yeah,
because it is deeply creepy and menacing, and also has a free-flowing eroticism to it that just captures the dichotomy of the undead status of the vampire who's also tethered to life.
Yeah.
Like, it is so fucking good, and Kinski is horrifying, and Johnny is dreamy and mystifying. God, I fucking love that movie.
Who was Johnny in that? Was it somebody of note?
Johnny?
Wait, what did
Isabella
you say?
Johnny.
I thought you said Johnny
actress.
because his name's John Harker, right?
The lawyer, right?
The like guy that goes.
But no,
I thought you were like Johnny, and I was like, God damn,
Isabella
I was
Johnny
really familiar with the characters in the movie, like on a Johnny name basis.
Yeah, John. You know, my guy Johnny.
The like kind of like big eyed the Harker, the woman.
Yes.
God damn it.
From the
I can't
story
remember
of
the character. Yeah,
Adele H. and Queen Margot and Possession and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
That's the same lady.
Yes.
Damn, I'm now putting it all together.
Yes.
I was watching with my wife, and I just called her, like, I can't remember what I kept calling her, but something related to Shelley Duvall, because she just reminded me of Shelley Duvall.
She had a big-eyed waif,
Yeah,
for
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
But, yeah, she absolutely fulfills that, like, threatened innocence. Just,
Yeah, and
what
so
a picture.
Really creepy, like the scenes where, like,
Where he, like, floats?
yeah, they use the shadows and Klaus Kinski's weird bald white head. Oh, that was the part that was really funny. Was when we rented it, it said the description on Amazon was Klaus Kinski is pale, bald, and one other like insulting term for it. But yeah, like his weird pale head and like just kind of floats into frame. It's so goddamn creepy.
Yeah.
But yeah, those were awesome. And then I'm also reading a book called Sure, I'll Join Your Cult by Maria Bamford. Do you know Maria Bamford?
Yes, I'm quite familiar with Maria Bamford. You can't be mentally ill and other people ascribe womanhood to you without being aware of her. I think
Okay,
it's
great.
just,
Yeah.
you know,
I love
it comes
her
with the territory.
so fucking much. Like she's the. Are you a fan?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
She's one of my like all-time favorite comedians. I just love how fucking absurd and weird she is, and god damn it. But this book is like her memoir about like having OCD, which is something I've had for a long time too, and just like the obsessive thoughts, and she just really like hers is much more like intense than anything I've ever experienced, but just like goddamn, she just writes about it like in such a funny way that I fucking love it, and it pairs really well with Fitzcarraldo about like obsessive weirdos that can't get shit out of their heads. But yeah, it's fucking great. Do you have a favorite Maria Bamford thing?
No, I mean, I like stand-up comedy a decent amount and have
like
watched,
Joe Rogan and stuff.
Yes, exclusively Joe Rogan. You have to have visited his compound in Austin, Texas, for me to even consider listening to you.
So do you know who Brendan Schaub is?
No, I don't think so.
I am obsessed with, in a much the same way I'm obsessed with like Ben Shapiro and all those idiots. I'm obsessed with Joe Rogan and his like comedy,
coterie.
Yeah, coterie. Like the Cat Williams thing where he said, "Oh, that sent them into a tizzy." By the way, them trying to figure out I'm not one of the five. Where was I going with this?
Yeah, I definitely do not recognize this man at all.
But Brendan Schaub is a Joe hanger-on that used to be a UFC fighter and is
sense.
like terribly unfunny. Why did I bring? God damn it.
I don't know. I was about to talk about stand-up comedy, and you were like, "Do you know who?"
Yeah, I know. It was the Joe Rogan side trail. Anyways, never mind. Brendan Schaub's an idiot. God
That's
damn
right.
it.
We just needed a brief
I just
detour
lost
to call
it.
this man an idiot, which I always support. But I like quite a lot of stand-up comedy, and I view a decent amount of it, with Mike, my husband, but it's not something that I catalog in the same way that I catalog movies. I don't even mean just literally like writing it down. But my brain just doesn't. I'm like, this is how my brain receives stand-up comedy. I'm like, oh, stand-up comedy said that was funny or it was not funny, and I have a general impression of that person, and then it like maybe I watch it again incidentally and forget that I had seen it previously.
I've done that too, yeah.
Or not, but I'm not like
You don't have the recall for the bits and stuff.
Yeah, it's just not how I consume it. I am happy like a ghost for it to pass through me, and I go, whoo, if it moved me. But
did you see Lady Dynamite?
yes, yeah.
I also
that was before I had totally given up on TV. Though I am actually going to talk a little bit about some TV later.
Yeah.
So.
I also saw one other stand-up special from a fucking comedian that I love is Rory Scovel. His new special is out. And
what is it on?
HBO. It's called Religion, Drugs, and a few things in between or something like that.
Okay.
And it's really funny. He comes from, I feel like, a similar background, and like he was raised like evangelical in the South, and a big chunk of this is about that and just like his weirdo takes on all of it, and it's really funny.
Yeah, I like him. I mean, I would, kind of, he's in that like comedy Bang Bang orbit.
Yeah.
And like So I like his.
Have
I
you
like his
seen
stuff.
the special that he begins by just screaming anal repeatedly for like 2.5 minutes? He
I
comes
cannot
out.
say.
He comes
that
out
I
like
locked
he's
that
doing
in.
crowd work, and he arrives on some thing where he says something about anal, and then just takes the mic and is a solid minute and a half just going anal, anal to everyone in the audience. And I saw him live one time, and he got at FSU, and he called a cop that was like up on the. Do you remember like the old club down under?
Yeah.
And where the cop would sit near the door?
Mm-hmm.
The dude fell asleep. The cop fell asleep, and Rory Scovel like called
Nothing
him.
but the best, baby.
Rory Scovel called him on stage and like got him to hand him his club and was like poking at him and making fun of him. It was fucking funny.
Damn. I will say that is just my very specific axe to grind that you, me, and 3 people that listen to this will care
Yes.
about it all. But damn, has Club Down Under fallen off?
Damn, they do have a new Club
They
Down
do have
Under,
a new
right? I have not
space.
been there.
I have no idea as to like the institutional dynamics of it, but the funding for it must have
Yeah.
significantly changed since we were younger.
Yeah.
Since we were younger, since I don't know, in the last 10 years, maybe specifically, because there's like all manner of cool people comedians, burlesque acts, filmmaker, etc., that I used to be able to see, and it's not simply a matter of me not paying attention because I look routinely,
Right. Yeah. It's just
and their programming is
not great.
It must be funding driven.
Yeah.
But
and the old like the setup of the old Club Down Under I loved, with like the lower level and then the fucking balcony up top was really cool. I just like that place a lot.
yeah, I believe that the space is smaller than it was.
Is it
before
really?
Too.
Damn.
Yeah. But alas, nostalgia for student programming at FSU 10 to 15 years ago.
Well, what about you? What have you been watching since I've detoured us on comedy and Tallahassee venues?
Listen, we exist for the detour. That's what this card gets going for, right? Is the detour. So I want to talk about like 2 movies that I've recently watched, and I'll talk a little bit about some TV, the boob tube, if you will. But for film, I've been revisiting some old favorites that I've watched other movies since the last time we recorded, but I'm bringing these 2 up together because I think they're united, and that they both, to me, represent some like kind of pre-modernist narrative modes, at least in terms of the viewer's relationships to the film subjects. In both of these films, the characters are not audience member stand-ins. We're not intended to, I mean, I think you can, I'm not trying to say there is no room for empathy or empathizing, but the narrative function and like how the narrative is constructed and how the characters are constructed is not to like empathize or view these characters as naturalistic depictions of fully fleshed out individuals with their own rich internal lives independent of the narrative that they're presented in, right? So the first of these is over in December, I got the Criterion Collection disc of one of my favorite flicks of all time, Barry Lyndon. Have you?
That's one of the only Stanley Kubrick movies I've seen. I know, it's one of the ones that the runtime always is like when I want to put on a movie and I'm like 3 hours, fuck.
Listen,
It's one that I've been so close so many times recently too, and I'm gonna make it a priority so we can talk about it.
Yeah, I try pretty hard generally to not be like, oh my god, you have to see this?
Yeah.
Because like I just genuinely believe, one, like that's not a fun way to relate to someone, and two, it's just not meaningful because it almost is like a door shutter as opposed to a door opener.
Right. Yeah.
Right, in terms of the and it's just not good conversation making, whatever. But you have to see.
Yeah, I know.
This.
I know that is one of the ones that I know that is a blind spot.
One of my favorite movies, and
yeah.
There's a lot of movies that I love. Like I would say, like right now, for example, like Suspiria 2018, the remake. It's in my top 4, like on Letterboxd. It is one of my favorite movies. There is no universe in which I would ever, in the conversation with someone, say, this is one of the best movies ever made. the difference between the gulf between my perspective and feelings and opinion and me asserting, I'm almost never asserting the overall generalized objective quality of something. You gotta fucking see this goddamn movie. And listener, you gotta see this goddamn fucking movie. I will say it's kind of hard to access digitally. I swear to God, if you fucking own it and haven't watched it, I'm gonna fucking Ludwig method you from A Clockwork Orange and Prior Islands.
Can you see the Kubrick discs? Because I can't see it.
Which one?
We're looking at my collection to see if it's second row from the top, almost all the way to the right.
I see. The Shine. Let's see. Paths of Glory. Eyes Like Shine, The Shining 2000. You do.
I do own it. I thought I might.
You do.
That struck me as a garage sale find that I had.
I fully insist that you watch this movie. It is so delightful. As it relates to my overall point about, there's a thing about modernist like literature and just narrative mode in general, whatever, narrative texts, modernist narrative texts, where it's very focused on like the individual, and the individual is this like fully fleshed out, right? Our conceptions of self and people as like fully rounded individuals with motivations and feelings were like developing anew. And what I love about this so much is like that is not what is happening in this. Like Barry Lyndon is not a character that is intended to be a fully fleshed out human. Like he is a vessel for frankly like this like moral tale about social mobility. It's a picaresque, which is a narrative form that's kind of like a never do well, kind of lovable, kind of not guy on a series of like adventures.
A scamp.
A scamp on a journey, right? And that is absolutely what this movie is.
Aren't we all just scamps on journeys?
Yeah, I'm trying to be a scamp on a journey, The other movie, which I watched last night at AMC, because AMC in the month of February did once a week a different, older A24
that's cool.
single showing, and last night they played The Lighthouse.
Hell yeah. Seen that one.
Went to see that. It is the second time I've seen it. The first time I saw it in theaters during its initial theatrical run. And this fits into my like thesis about kind of these movies that are almost this like pre-modernist idea, because it's just like archetypal mythical storytelling about a Promethean power struggle between a man and his god, or is it his dad, or is it his boss? Or maybe it's about him battling his desires or himself. All of it.
Lobsters.
I don't know. Lobsters. Eating lobsters.
When somebody says
spilling his beans.
That's take your lobsters. And you spilled your beans.
The lobster bit is that Willem Dafoe's character is mad that he won't admit that he likes his lobster.
That's right. Yeah.
Because
God damn, I gotta rewatch that.
Robert, it was delightful. I enjoyed it just as much as the first time around. But so it kind of I see a connection between this is a kind of movie I like that's just, it's not really about flesh and bones people. It's about something else, and the characters are vessels, vehicles for that. Both of these films do that, but also they're movies that I like a lot. Barry Lyndon I've seen many, many times. In fact, the reason why I bought the Criterion Collection disc is because I was like, I have to stop paying $4 to watch this
it every time on
3 months or whatever.
I will do that sometimes with movies that I own because I don't want to walk upstairs like an asshole.
So, and Lighthouse, this was the second time, but I always like when I have seen a movie more than once to reflect on like, what was the thing that stuck out to me this time? And Barry Lyndon is a same as it ever was moment. Those candlelit shots, baby. The fact that there are these, like, it is a marvel of filmmaking. There are all of these shots, particularly in gambling rooms, or like dens where gambling is happening, that are just entirely lit by candles and were shot only using that candlelight.
Yeah, that's cool.
And it is just, it casts these like chiaroscuro shadows that move and like vibrate with the action on screen in a way that is just like you could watch the movie and only pay attention to that.
Yeah, I know that's one of the ones that's always described as like any frame you can pause on and it's like a Renaissance painting or whatever.
Yeah.
And I know that much about it.
Let's
still not seeing it.
Like the Dutch old masters, you know. And then the thing that I noticed about the Lighthouse last night that was really cracking me up is how much of their posturing and gestures is just feels very silent movie era. Like there's the scene where Robert Pattinson's character is like running away from the siren when he like first has contact with the mer person, and he runs like his joints like a marionette, basically, like his joints are flim flam everywhere. And it happens again later in the movie where Willem Dafoe is chasing Robert Pattinson with an axe, and they're both just running in this way that is like Buster Keaton ass motherfuckers. And that was really sticking out to me this time, is just like how much like intentional dislodging of time and like references that are just embedded in the way the movie is made and directed and how the performances are cast. That I found really delightful. Yeah.
And he has a new one coming out this year, right?
He does.
And it's Nosferatu.
It's Nosferatu.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I tell you a funny Nosferatu story? This is not
Always.
that funny. So, my wife for Christmas in for Christmas in 2022, got me a Nosferatu pop, like little pop figure. She just saw it and she was like, "Oh, okay." And then realized like, oh shit, I didn't realize that this one doesn't even get released until summer 2023. So she's like, shit, it won't be here till 2023, or like July of 2023, and then it's been pushed back to December of 2023, and then now at this point, I think just recently got an update that it's now like January 2025. So this like this like $10 pop she bought me in the beginning of December a year and 2 months ago is still
Nosferatu, timeless.
Hey,
you know, ageless.
Hell yeah.
That's funny. Mike bought me for Valentine's Day the Zac Efron Von Erich like A24 produced action figure that goes associated with the Iron Claw, but it doesn't come out, like he bought it a month ago or whatever, ordered it, and it does not come out until August, he said. So now I'm
you're gonna get yours in 2027. So
the last things I'll talk about in this section is I like had a cold last week, and I've just been watching a little more TV than I usually do. So have you heard of The Floor?
I haven't. I'm intrigued though.
The Floor. I told Mike I think they should drop the and
Can
just
I guess
call
what
it
it is?
Floor. Yeah, I'll say this. It's a game show.
Oh,
what do you think the premise is?
Okay, honestly, I thought my guess I was gonna be like, this is not gonna be it, but I was gonna say a game show where like they have to do some sort of task or else the floor will drop out beneath them.
Oh, okay. You're right in that a floor is relevant.
Okay. Well.
As you can tell by the name. No, it is a Rob Lowe hosted game show.
Oh my God.
That it starts with 80 people in on a grid on the ground where they each stand in a box. Each of them has a expert category associated with them that they have defined as a base of knowledge that they hold.
Okay.
And then people challenge each other, and whoever is challenged, those two people face off in that category.
Okay.
And the category, the way the face off works is it's pictures in that category. So for example, someone's category was horror films. It was like stills from the horror film.
Oh, until you can name it.
And they have to bounce back and forth, and they each have 30 seconds or 40 seconds or something, some amount of time. And your time ticks down until you bounce it back to the other person. And if you decide to skip, you lose 3 seconds. And whoever hits 0 first, the other person wins.
Okay.
And then you eat. They consume the floor, Like,
Wait,
not
hold on.
literally, sorry. The person who wins gets the square of the person they challenge.
Oh, okay. Like Risk.
Yeah, that's exactly what I said. I was like, you're the king of the fish.
Yeah.
Out there. And so they slowly eat up. And then there's also this dynamic
That sounds cool.
Yeah, it's... So I love trivia. You know, Craig and I both love trivia. And I love game shows in general. I was kind of, you know, raised on them, watched a lot of them. It's fun because it's has the trivia element, but there's also a little bit of kind of just like incidental, accidental goofiness because it is image based.
Okay.
You can challenge someone and maybe know the category better than them because you're just
Right. Yeah.
because of the goofiness of guessing.
The rigor
and it being
is not
visual.
to.
Right. And the rigor varies very wildly. Like watching images from specific horror movies is very different. One person's category was like kitchen items. Like it could be that generic.
Yeah.
But the thing that makes it very interesting is that the season is one game and the episodes are
Like each person challenging
45
someone.
minutes of people taking the floor, and then it goes to the next episode. Because
Does everybody go in an episode?
no,
Okay.
it just you go until you don't want to go anymore. Like if you win,
Oh, so you can keep challenging.
you can continue to challenge,
Oh,
or you
okay.
can say no, I'm going to stay on the floor. I'm done challenging, and then a randomizer, which is obviously not random, chooses the next person who initiates another challenge. But it's very unique. Like when you think about game show model is inherently like episodic. Every episode
Right,
is totally distinct from the one previous. And this has continuity and you're watching the game across all of it, which is just interesting. Not something
that
I've
is
really
cool.
seen before, but it is fun, and it's fun to play along because it's image based. You can kind of
Just
yell
shout
it
it out.
out
Yeah.
in a way that is maybe a little more fun to play along, more facilitative of playing along.
Or
So
you don't have to read the clue like in Jeopardy.
yeah. It's
Got it.
skirt. Sorry, like that guy.
Yeah.
You see that clip of that guy?
Yeah. I love.
He didn't put his full pussy in it in the way that I just did, but
He
said
looked like a dweeb.
skirt.
He looked like a dweeb.
Skirt.
I've been watching the fucking Celebrity Jeopardies because that's all that's on like Hulu, and goddamn, they let those fucking famos talk too much in those, and it makes them nearly unwatchable. There's like extra talk breaks.
They do drag on. I will say, I am a big fan of Katie Nolan, who makes it quite far in it. She's a sports journalist.
Oh yeah.
And I am delighted by her. She is married to, speaking of comedy, or maybe not married. Maybe they're not married, but she's in a long-term relationship with Dan Soder. Do you know who he is?
Yeah.
The comedian. He's also really big into pro wrestling. So there's a lot of intersections, but she is on one of my favorite comedy podcasts pretty frequently, All Fantasy Everything. So I'm pretty fond of her. And on some of those podcasts, both Dan's and when she's been on All Fantasy, she's talked about like the prep that she did. Like she took it very seriously, which is obviously a pretty significant contrast from some of those people that are on there, and you're like, your agent did not prepare you for what this was going to be.
Becky Lynch.
Oh yeah,
Damn, she did bad.
It's also, I don't think that Jeopardy, like and even though Celebrity Jeopardy is way easier, I don't think like a relatively serious trivia format lends itself well to maintaining kayfabe.
Right.
Like
Just
it's like weird.
Yeah,
it's
couldn't.
funky.
Yeah. And she did
very bad.
very poorly. Yeah.
So yeah, that's my bid for the floor. It's on Hulu. Watch it. It's fun. And the episodes are kind of long again because it's kind of low intensity. It's a good vibe out, you know, just like put up and turn every once. I'm like cooking dinner and yelling out, you know.
We call those impractical joker shows.
We do. Yes, we do. Well known category. The other TV thing I want to bring up is Tokyo Vice. Have you seen this?
I have not. I'm
Have you heard of
aware. It's who's that guy? Ansel Elgort? Is that who's in it?
Yeah.
Beautiful name. Elgort. He's got some.
Yeah, beautiful man that has no allegations against him
Whoop,
whatsoever.
woo. Yeah.
God, I was talking to for Kirsten about this because, well, first let me say Tokyo Vice is based on a book that was written by an American journalist who lived in Japan for a long time named Jake Edelstein, and he covered, as the title would suggest, like he was on the Vice beat. He was on a crime beat. He was on a Yakuza beat in Tokyo, and was a real guy and wrote a book about it. And the show is a fictionalization of that. The second season is currently releasing.
Who's involved in that? Is that Nick? Is it the True Detective guy?
It's not. I want to say the guy has definitely done other things, but I struggle to recall off the top of my head. But the first season came out, I want to say in like 2022, and Mike and I watched it. I really liked it. Talked about before. I love gangster shit, and it is a really solid version of that.
Yeah.
It is very noir-y. It takes place in the 90s or very early 2000s maybe, and so it just has this slightly lower fi thing to it that it builds mystery and tension really well, and it has, kind of the fish out of water aspect of this like American journalist. But there are some really great Japanese actors in it, including Ken Watanabe.
Hell yeah.
Who I like a lot. And oh goodness, what's her name? Rinko
Kikuchi. Yeah. Yes. Hell yeah.
So Rinko Kikuchi plays a journalist who's higher up in the newspaper than Jake Edelstein's character, or the character named Jake Edelstein. And Ken Watanabe is a detective who works the Vice beat.
Hell yeah.
And so kind of becomes a source for the work that Jake is doing.
So he's Ansel Elgort's not a cop, just a journalist?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Basically, like the very first episode is like he takes an entry test into a very well-established, prestigious newspaper and crushes it, and then gets hired, and he's like literally the first non-Japanese native to ever
that's cool.
get a job there.
Yeah.
And apparently, again, like is real or reflects, this guy's experience. And then we see a couple of different like Yakuza groups, navigating around each other, navigating around the cops, the reporting that goes with it. So I really liked the first season. Again, I'm just my Ansel Elgort. And I've been really excited for a second one, and it took 2 years, but it's releasing now, and it's
nice.
It's quite.
Do they dump the episodes all at once, or are
no,
they?
It's releasing on a weekly basis. So actually, I think Thursdays are when they come out. So maybe I'll go home and finish catching up. But
listener secret, this is recorded on a Thursday.
I feel like I have not seen very many people talking about it, and so I've been trying to convert some friends. I'm like, you like The Sopranos? Watch this fucking show.
Hell yeah.
Damn it. So that they don't cancel it. Also, it doesn't seem like the guy who's the showrunner has made other TV, but he's like a theater guy, which honestly kind of makes sense in terms of how it's written. And that he made a movie called Oslo that Spielberg produced based on one of his plays.
Okay.
Oh, interesting. Honestly, maybe we should watch this at some point.
Oh shit! I just pulled it up at the same time. Yeah.
Oslo is a play by J.T. Rogers recounting in dramatized, partially fictional form the true life, previously secret back-channel negotiations and the development of the pivotal 1990s Oslo peace accords between Israel and the Palestinian Liberation Organization (PLO). Honestly, that sounds kind of fire.
It's got Andrew Scott in it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, and Ruth Wilson.
We gotta,
Hell yeah, that sounds dope.
We gotta add it to a list. So
well, that might also be a good transition into our current events here.
Yes.
What's going on in the world that's either got you celebrating or living in despair?
So I wanted to talk a little bit about the Independent Spirit Awards. We are in award season, and like, we're a political podcast, but we're also a film podcast. So I watched almost all of them when they aired on February 25th, this last weekend. And there were a couple. So there's two main things I want to talk about here. The first is movies, and then the second is politics. So let's talk about the movies first. I wanted to raise a couple of movies either to other folks' attention or just kind of to cast intentions as things that I would like to watch in the next year. The first, and the one I want to see the most, is called Mountains. It was directed by Monica Sorrell, and it's about a Haitian demolition worker in Miami who comes face to face with gentrification. It sounds like he is grappling with his own like the implications of the work that he's doing. Then there's also 1001. This is a movie that did come to theaters very briefly in Tallahassee and I missed seeing, so I definitely want to rectify that. It was directed by A.W. Rockwell, and it stars Teyana Taylor, and she's playing a mother on the run who is in some way like child protective services, or like the court is trying to intervene, and she's trying to, like, you know, keep their family together. And then the last one that was talked about a lot and won some awards, that was really popping up for me, was called Fremont, and it's about an Afghan refugee in her 20s living in Fremont, California, looking for love and also coping with survivor's guilt associated with her leaving Afghanistan. And also, like, an interesting weird thing in this is that the therapist in that movie is played by Greg Turkington, who's, you know, part of like the Heidecker Tim and Eric universe.
That's why this is the only one on this list that I knew about before. It was because of Greg Turkington. You know, Turkington is one of the stars of On Cinema. And I am saying this last because it is a segue into the political aspect that I wanted to bring up with the Independent Spirit Awards, which is that when this movie won an award, the director, Babak Jalai, was, while on stage, one of the only people to acknowledge that there was an ongoing noise demonstration happening outside of the awards the whole time. And what was that demonstration about? Oh, it was about Palestine. So basically, Kyle Buchanan, who's a New York Times reporter who covers film, honestly, I recommend following during award season specifically. He's a great follow on Twitter because he will live tweet what is going on at an award ceremony, including like very detailed stuff, video, what's happening behind the scenes. Like he is reporting. He's actually reporting. Did he used to write for AV Club or something?
Maybe.
Because I know that
he's
name.
Been around
I just can't
for
remember
a hot
where
minute. I think he's like a couple years old, like maybe slightly older than you.
24. I went too young that time.
He's 15. So Kyle Buchanan, this New York Times reporter, covered the protest on Twitter as it was happening. Recorded including things like recording video of security trying to suppress the chants in a variety of ways, like parking a Sprinter van in front of the protesters, like the Sprinter van was gonna like block the sound or something.
It was just like going, like, because they were walking behind it, and it was just like slowly like moving with them.
So stupid.
Because the protest was like just a couple people.
Yes.
And they just had a bus slowly rolling back and forth.
As they walked back and forth. They also, at one point in time, security started pointing event speakers out at the protesters, like bounce the event sound more directly at them. And it was Kyle who initially reported that at least one of the activists involved was associated with the National Alliance Against Racist and Police Repression. Later, some New York Times, like actual like published reporting as opposed to on Twitter, added that one of the leaders was filmmaker Murari Garama, who actually previously won an award in 2021 from the Independent Spirits, the John Cassavetes Award. The John Cassavetes Award awards a film that is made for $1 million or less, and the movie in question was Residue. The LA Times reported that the protesters were holding up a loudspeaker that was playing a pre-recorded looped chant of free Palestine, long live Palestine, and ceasefire now. So I bring this up as one, like, share information if you don't pay attention to the Independent Spirit Awards, which fair enough. But also because I think it's good to reflect on like lessons that could be learned, because I do think this was an effective demonstration.
Yeah.
This demonstration had very clear demands. They were asking for the awards show, the Independent Spirit Awards, and the organization that runs it to call for a ceasefire formally as an organization. And it was connected, those demands were connected to a powerful threat: continued sonic disruption. I watched, like I said, most of the show. You could absolutely the fuck hear them the entire time. Like, there was no, it was on
cool.
the stream,
Yeah.
you could hear them. And I think another lesson to be learned here is that the impact of the protest was engineered to be outsized relative to the number of participants. Like Craig said, there weren't very many people there, but they used a pre-recorded loop that they could just continue to amplify the sound of. And it allowed them to strive for consistency and higher volume while minimizing risk and controlling the crowd. You don't have to deal with the threat of they're going to call the cops because there's 70 people and we can't control who's doing what. It was like a very small group
with a boombox. What are you gonna do?
Yes, and all those people like know each other. Like, right, there's the control on the level of like, you're going to do exactly what the fuck we agreed to do, and you're not opening the door to like random folks who are trying to capitalize or might have their own intentions, right? And I would say like this is not really like a positive lesson to be learned necessarily. But I think it's important to reflect on that the action was connected to national organizations like NARPR. NARPR is the, again, National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression. There's orgs in Tallahassee, like TCAC, that actually have connections to NARPR. NARPR does really great work all across the country, and they're socialists who care about stopping police violence. And it was also connected to the U.S. Palestinian Community Network. But it was only really possible to learn that if you really actively sought out the information like I did. Like, even Kyle only reported the NARPR. And then the LA Times reporting is like, also he said, the same guy said NARPR and this U.S. Palestinian Community Network. So I think that's, you know, maybe a lesson to be learned there is like, even when you do everything in your power and you make an impact and you're heard and you are disruptive in a powerful and deliberate way, like still that some of that like branding or people fully connecting the demand to an overarching framework or like program of effort is really hard.
Yeah. Well, that probably leads into the thing that I want to talk about, which is another Free Palestine protest, which was the protest of Aaron Bushnell earlier this week. If you don't know, Aaron Bushnell is the Air Forceman who self-immolated outside the Israeli embassy on Monday, I think. And his dying words were "Free Palestine" while he burned in front of the Israeli embassy. He seemed like a really cool guy. He grew up in like a weirdo cult. Nah, it wasn't a cult. Like a weirdo religious group in like Cape Cod, and left to join the Air Force. He got disillusioned and started setting up mutual aid groups in the various cities he lived in, and was currently involved in planning to, I guess, attend some active duty transition program when he got out of the Air Force in the spring. But yeah, it was a like pretty remarkable form of protest, and I think part of what you were talking about was the kind of the lack of the public or the media grappling with the message. And I know I'm not the first to point this out, but the number of like headlines and things that kind of tried to make an act like this as apolitical as possible. Like I saw a grid shot on Twitter of like all the major newspapers with similar headlines like "Activist self-immolates outside embassy" or something like that, without like naming why he did what he did. But yeah, I just wanted to mention it. You know, it's not, not the most exciting or most uplifting thing to talk about, but I do think it was a pretty remarkable form of protest, and I do think it is telling the like general media response to it. Yeah,
I definitely agree fully with especially that last point of it is in like moments of significant like political upheaval and sacrifice that we like can truly see how craven power is and how it operates by how it responds to gestures and acts like the sacrifice that Aaron made.
Yeah, and he is the second person in the U.S. to do it too. Someone did it in Atlanta outside the embassy, and that footage has been like, basically, it seems like it's trying to get buried so as not to get the message out there, I guess. Whereas that person in Atlanta did survive.
Yeah, and I do think something that's important contextually, and this is not a unique thought, and something I've seen several people say, but there is, something particularly potent in terms of aligning tactic with intended outcome for someone who is an active member of the military doing it opposed to I'm not like casting aspersions or saying like we talked a lot last episode about high risk activism, and self-immolation is maybe obviously the highest form of sacrifice for political cause. But I think in terms of, again, alignment of tactic, strategy, intended outcome, someone who is an active member of the military there's the most harmony and through line for seeing like the harmony between those different elements because that person's body is an agent of state violence.
Right, yeah. Which, I mean, undoubtedly is something he was aware of, which made
I just mean, I think it's like that it is not the only time someone has done this as it relates to Palestine is so important. And self-immolation is also, can kind of relate to last week, a tactic that has been sometimes used by climate activists. But I think there is something almost even more powerful or even more potent about someone trying to invert the directionality of the violence that their body has been associated in producing.
Right. Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. But yeah, R.I.P. to Aaron Bushnell. Yeah. So with that, I guess we can move on to our talk. The reason we've gathered here today, which is to talk about the movie Matewan.
Yeah, I will say I forgot until watching the movie. I always say Matewan when talking about this movie, and that's not how it's pronounced.
So I did hear you say that one time, but the only time I've ever heard it, because my dad loves this movie, and he's always told me, like, you got to see Matewan, and then you said it, and I was like, well, it's probably Matewan. My dad's always mispronounces stuff.
I mispronounce shit all the time.
So I was like, I'll wait till I see the movie.
Yeah, so I was watching, I went, oh yeah.
Yeah.
So,
but no, I was
Matewan.
Sorry, Dad, but I was immediately convinced that he was incorrect.
No. There are many things that I would say maybe fair to trust Hal about. Pronunciation is always going to be fucking bottom of the list. My parents will love to tell you the story about me being 12 and saying epitome
instead of
epitome. Like, spell that out.
Epitum. I don't know.
Epitome.
Oh, can I tell you what mine is? That's like that my parents make fun of me. Is I don't remember why I was saying it to get on my whole family's nerves, but I kept saying voila. I was like little, like probably like 8 or 9. I was like voila. And then one time, like when it was like really cold and you could like write in the window, I was like trying to annoy my dad when he dropped me off to school, and I tried to write it in the window, and I wrote WOOLAH. Woola.
Say that again.
WOOLAH. Woola. Listen, I was a dumb guy. I come by my dumbness rightly. But yeah, we watched John Sayles' 1987 film Matewan, which tells the true story of the West Virginia coal wars that occurred in the early 20th century. Of the mine wars. And by the way, all this information is coming from the National Park Service that has like great info on the like entire mine wars of the early 20th century, 1910 to 1920s. But yeah, in 1912, 8 years before the events depicted in Matewan, miners in West Virginia began efforts to organize under the United Mine Workers of America, the UMWA. And if what eventually happened in the town of Matewan was the climax of the mine wars, the opening salvo occurred between 1912 and 1913 when miners in Paint Creek Valley and Cabin Creek, also in West Virginia, went on strike without the aid of a union. That's when the coal barons began evicting mining families who lived on their property, and the people in Paint Creek Valley and Cabin Creek fought back, starting a 13-month standoff. The Paint Creek Valley Cabin Creek strike caught the attention of the UMWA, who sent organizing legend Mother Jones to West Virginia to assist. In turn, the coal companies hired the Baldwin-Felts Detective Agency as muscle to intimidate the strikers. The standoff in Paint Creek Valley and Cabin Creek culminated with the coal operators driving a train through a camp filled with evicted striking workers. All told, 25 people died during the 13-month standoff. Fast forward 8 years to 1920 in the setting of John Sayles' Matewan. The town of Matewan in West Virginia is a coal mining town where the coal barons are up to their old tricks, forcibly evicting workers who are striking for higher wages, safer working conditions, etc. But this time around, the striking miners have assistance from the UMWA in the form of organizer Joe Kinahan, played by Chris Cooper, who leads the striking workers through a series of violent clashes and internal subterfuge. There's a gloomy melancholy to the film that I couldn't quite put my finger on, and then I read this New York Times review by a film critic named Vincent Canby. Have you ever heard of this guy? Me neither. And I was going to quote it here, but when I went back to the review, I realized that I used up my one free New York Times review, so I'm just going to have to paraphrase.
Class out here, folks.
Essentially, what Vincent Canby wrote is that Matewan's melancholy tone is a contemporary commentary on the state of unions and labor organizing today. When Chris Cooper gives a rousing speech, there's a hint of cynicism amongst the whimsy because John Sayles wrote and directed this movie knowing that between the 60 years of the film's setting and its release, the American political industrial machine has effectively neutered labor unions. How do you feel about this idea? Did you get that melancholy vibe? Is this...
For sure.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting to view that as possibly a reflection of the current state of unions, and I could see where that could come from. I also think that narratively it is one of the ways that the film feels like a Western.
Oh yeah.
Is by not having, like, even though the lines of good and evil are clear cut, that it's not always guaranteed that the white hat's gonna win.
Right.
And so I see it kind of filling a narrative, a function as well.
Yeah. But yeah, let's initial reactions. Do we like it? Do we love it? Do we hate it?
Yeah, I like this movie. I have seen it once before, viewing it for today's discussion, because I had a professor at FSU, Daniel Tope, who would include it as part of his undergraduate classical sociological theory course. So when we covered Marx, he would require that you watch this movie too. And I liked it then when I saw it in probably 2011, and I liked it now. And I think that my favorite things about it is almost, I don't want to say complaint, but it's almost the thing that I wish was pushed more, which is that there's another version of this movie that is only focused on the white men and like Chris Cooper's character and the existing miners in the existing town, and the fact that it pulls on all of these different groups and understands the ways in which like the working class does not have a single face, I think is really like beautiful and powerful. And I almost wish it was just pushed like a little bit more.
Yeah. I guess I had not seen it before, and I loved it. And yeah, I guess I did think, though, having not seen it before, that James Earl Jones had a larger role in the movie than he does.
Like, yeah, and I think...
I mean, he's great in it. It's just not... I always, like, when I read about it, I always thought of it as kind of a twofer. The Chris Cooper, James Earl Jones buddy action flick.
Lethal Weapons in West Virginia.
Just way less anti-Semitic.
I think that and this is like getting a tiny bit ahead of ourselves, but I think one of the things that Sayles, who also wrote the movie, decides to push forth is an emphasis on family and how the union benefits. The lack of union hurts family, and the presence of union benefits family and solidifies solidarity across familial lines. And because of the specific conditions that lead to the black workers being present, which is they're scabbing them and pulling black men away from their families and sending them on trains, that there are not families present for the black men, whereas there are families present for the Italian immigrants and for like the white already present in West Virginia. So I think that creates, like, I would have loved to see more of the discussions and the camps of the black workers. Yeah. And I think the emphasis on family just narratively pulls the vision away. So, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, the movie itself is kind of framed around the arrival of Joe Kinahan into Matewan. And the movie has a great cast of strange, charming miners and townies. James Earl Jones plays a guy named Few Clothes Johnson, which is a fantastic name. An old union man who gets a job with that group of black miners who are hired as scab workers to replace the strikers. David Strathairn plays Matewan Police Chief Sid Hatfield, loyal to the workers and a descendant of the infamous Hatfield-McCoy rivalry. And Will Oldham playing Danny Radner, maybe my favorite character, a 15-year-old preacher whose mother runs a boarding house and rents it out to two sadistic dickheads from the aforementioned Baldwin-Felts detective agency, the same gang of hired union-busting dorks from the Paint Creek Valley and Cabin Creek strikes. But yeah, also, do you know who Will Oldham is? Do you know the guy?
That's what I was just looking up. I feel like his music is something that I'm familiar with. Yeah, the Silver Jews, for sure. I am familiar with that.
That's him? Mm-hmm. Oh, is he...
Oh, fuck!
The Kelly Reichardt movie.
Yes.
That's where I was going to predict you know him from.
The reason why I said, oh, fuck, is because he's Bonnie Prince Billy, apparently, which I absolutely know.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that musical persona until I looked it up.
I used to listen to that a lot in, like, undergrad. I used to listen to a lot more, like... recent. I mean, I'm sure that he has continued to release stuff, but...
Put your age out there. I'm sorry.
I will be 33 in 2 weeks.
It did sound like... I thought that was more recent.
No, yeah, Bonnie Prince Billy. He started releasing stuff under Bonnie Prince Billy in 1999.
Oh, shit.
But he has continued to, up through last year, at least.
Yeah.
But,
well, I realized I knew him from Old Joy, that Kelly Reichardt movie, about two bros that go camping, if I remember. There's a little bit more nuance to it than that. But yeah, he's great in this as a kid actor, giving sermons and shit.
Yeah, he is... so much of there are many scenes that drive the plot forward that rest on his performances.
Yeah, and emotionally too, because he's kind of the like all those like great dinner table sequences where so the Danny character's mom has the boarding house and rents it to these two, like the two main heavies of the Baldwin-Felts detective agency, and they have these fucking awesome dinner scene, like repeated dinner scenes where it's just more and more menacing, and he has a lot of the like emotional weight to carry in that, and like the stakes of the movie too.
Well, and there is also like some interesting stuff going on emotionally in that the success of the union and the ability for the union to continue to organize in a clandestine way is contingent on emotional control and withholding, right? Like keeping everything tight. Like you got to keep it tight, and mom has to not piss off the Baldwin-Felts guys that are staying with them. And because he's a child, he's able to express how all the adults are feeling,
right? But
aren't able to articulate and still accomplish their goals and stay safe. So it's like he also gets, has to be that ventilation point.
Yeah. But yeah, so let's talk about the first big kind of like first time we see the kind of machinations of the union like organizing, which is when Joe Kinahan shows up and goes to one of the union meetings to meet the like union boys, and there's a great scene where they like
I love
quiz
it.
him at the door and ask him. I think I wrote down all the folks that they asked him about, but
They asked him who wrote the Iron Hill,
and then
which is Jack London.
yeah,
Where is Joe Hill buried?
which was I forgot.
Yeah, I didn't write that down.
Oh no, because that's where the other guy you're gonna get to.
Which eye is Big Bill Haywood missing?
He gives a great response where he takes maybe a second too long and then is like the right one.
And then how did Frank Little die? Oh, where is Joe Hill buried? The answer to that is his ashes are spread.
Oh, that's right, all over the world. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. It just is so charming.
And the guy who plays the like union head, I guess, who's also going to be revealed fairly soon to be the kind of villain of the piece, or one of the villains of the piece, is Bob Gunton, legendary.
C.E. Lively is the name. Is the name of his character.
I fucking love Bob Gunton. That guy, like, you need a piece of shit. Get Gunton on the like. Obviously, he's the warden in Shawshank, but he plays kind of like a nebbishy asshole in almost everything. Shit, I got a thing. So yeah, once they get into the once Kinahan gets into the meeting is when we start to see kind of what they're up against and the kind of internal strife, because this is before they've decided to allow the black workers and the Italian workers to join, and that's when I think. Is that when Kinahan gives his kind of first rousing speech?
And I love it. There's, so basically Few Clothes, right? James Earl Jones' character shows up and says, like, I don't want to be a scab. Like, implying, right? Like, let me be a worker with you. Let me join your union. And Joe gives a speech where he points at Few Clothes and says, this is a worker. And I'm like, okay. No. And then he says, there's two sides. Them that work, them that don't. You work, they don't. And I was just like, I'm going to stand up and start clapping.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. And then we also see, I think fairly soon after that first scene, that C.E. Lively, Bob Gunton, is feeding information to the mining company, which I forgot to write down the name of the mining company, but it's like, Stone Mountain Mining Company. Yeah. And that will kind of be the like running tension throughout the movie is Bob Gunton feeding this information and who's the rat and all that. Sorry, I keep getting off the spot where we're at. Yeah, and then our first big kind of like tense sequence is the when the company tries to bring in the scabs in the middle of the night, and the union workers hear it and all kind of run out there, and there is what you think is going to be a big like intense shootout, and instead the black and Italian workers brought in as scabs basically join the union. And I have like the thing that makes me like emotional in movies is I can't remember if I've mentioned this before, but like when people all come together for like a common cause, when there's like a rousing like, hey, like a mart, like we're doing it. And I really love that sequence where they all kind of storm off from the property with the union guys. And that's when the I think Joe Kinahan is, as they're walking off, says, "These men are union men."
Yes.
Shit is awesome. Love that.
It is. This is definitely a movie where it's like, I'm standing up and I'm clapping. We're cheering.
Yeah. There's so many scenes like that too.
He gives the people what they want.
But there are like a shit ton of like great performances in here, and the two, I didn't write down the actors' names, but the two guys that play the heavies from Baldwin-Felts are so fucking creepy and scary. There's like so many good sequences with them when they go into is it a candy shop or like a ice cream parlor that the mayor owns, and they sit down and are like trying to intimidate the police chief into like letting the town, basically like the police chief kind of like bowing down to them. They're so fucking scary. And there's one line where he's got a big old smile, and I think he's got like ice cream or something in his mouth, and he says, "You boys are going up some pretty big people," and then gives like a really creepy smile, and it's like, God damn, love it.
Yeah, they do have several significant moments. I feel like there's Sayles does a great job of capturing their force, the power that they represent, and like the potential for intimidation and the stakes of that intimidation for the Union men in like really succinct, like just some really punchy kind of nuggets of scenes. Like we're not constantly seeing them and all their machinations. They like come in and intimidate someone, and it's like they're felt throughout their felts throughout
their Baldwin-Felts.
Their Baldwin-Felts
It
throughout
reminded
the
me
whole movie
of how the Ed Harris character is in History of Violence.
Ooh.
Where it's like similar, like small town. He's there kind of just like, you know, he's in the town somewhere, but he'll just show up at the diner and be like fucking weird and creepy.
He's lurking.
Yeah. He's definitely
He is
lurking. And then there's like, fuck, I lost what I was gonna say. Oh, I remember it, but we'll get to it when we talk about it later. I did want to ask you, what is your experience with John Sayles? What other John Sayles movies have you dipped your toes into? Because my list is short.
Okay, you go ahead on with your list.
Lone Star. The Matthew McConaughey, also Chris Cooper movie, which is fucking cool as shit. And he's always been one of those guys that like I want to watch more of and just never got around to it. But my dad loved Brother from Another Planet, which is the one that I really want to watch because my dad loved it so much and always talked about it.
Yeah, I have not seen any of his other directorial contributions. I have seen quite a few of the movies that he contributed to the writing of in the 70s and like his kind of Oh, no, that's not true. I've seen Brother from Another Planet.
You have?
Yes, I have.
Do you like Brother from Another Planet?
I do, but I love a schlocky, bullshitty, the exploitation movie. I didn't realize that he directed that as well. Yes.
Also, I will say my wife, as a kid, loved The Secret of Rowan and Nish. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, which I've never seen, but appears to me, I remember seeing it in Blockbuster as a kid, and it always was just, do you remember that movie Andre?
Yes.
About the seal?
Yes.
I always thought of it as Irish Andre because it's a girl and a seal on the cover of it. So John Sayles also did a movie where John Sayles also did a movie where I think an Irish girl befriends a seal. But also, do you know who the cinematographer is on this? Is legendary fucking dude, Wexler. How do you his name? Herschel, not Herschel. Harlan, something with an H.
Yes, and I did. I rented Matewan from Cap City Video Lounge. They had the Criterion of it, and because it's Criterion, there's an essay inside of it. That essay was called "All We Got in Common" by A.S. Hamra, and in it, the author talks about some of the stuff around like the lighting of the movie in particular, and how in all of the shots that take place in the mine, like honestly catching that theme back from Barry Lyndon, that all of the lighting used was emitted by the headlamps. The headlamps, yeah. And they did not introduce other external lighting, and that the goal for lighting the movie in general was the author described it as removing primary colors. Like they wanted the movie to be brown. It's and not gray.
Ugly, but it is beige.
It feels like you're in a fucking mine. The whole movie, even when you're not in the mine, right?
Yeah, it's a beautiful movie, but it is very beige colored.
Yes, so I thought that was an interesting thing that this Hammer pulled out about the movie and its cinematography. But tell me more about the cinematographer.
Oh, Haskell Wexler is just one of those like old school motherfucker like cinematography guys. I think he did shit with like Irving Berlin. Is that? I might be getting that wrong. But he also was like Cassavetes' cinematographer for quite a few movies as well. I'm gonna see. Is it Irving Berlin that he did work? That seems too old, but.
Oh yeah, I mean, we're talking. Goodness, we're talking Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. We're talking Faces. Obviously, that's Cassavetes. We're talking The Conversation by Coppola.
Yeah, hell yeah.
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. A bunch of Hal Ashby. Some Dennis Hopper, which makes sense. I assume we met him at
also, it was Irvin Kershner he worked with, not Irving Berlin.
I was like, is that guy really old? Wow.
Yeah.
Also, interesting. He was a cinematographer for one of Amy Holden Jones' movies.
Oh. And I believe that the only Oscar nominee that Matewan got was for cinematography, and Haskell Wexler specifically. But yeah, so do we want to get to when old Bob Gunton starts really spreading them lies?
Yes. So C.E. Lively's character, the character wants to engineer a situation to undermine the credibility and legitimacy of Joe Kinahan
Right.
in the eyes of the other people in the town, right? So what does he do?
He starts spreading a bunch of lies about Joe that are increasingly more disturbing, I guess. First, we see that he is telling C.E. Lively is telling Birdie, is Birdie a widow of a miner, I think?
Yes, Birdie's husband died in the same explosion that killed the woman who is Danny's mother and runs the boarding house. Like, there's a description that I think it's like Tower 5 or something, that there's a particular shaft that a fire engulfed it because the company refused to pay to shoot water down in it to tamper down the dust. Too much. The dust like ignited and caused a fire that killed a bunch of men, including her husband.
It's the opening sequence, right? We see it opens on like miners' hats popping around, and then you hear like a poof, and I took it. Am I crazy?
I don't know that you're crazy.
I just took it to mean as that was the explosion that is referenced a couple times as like killing some of the miners in town. But so Birdie is one of these widows, and C.E. Lively first tells her that Kinahan's been telling everyone that she's sleeping with the black workers, doesn't wear underwear, and she might be a possible spy. But then eventually convinces Birdie to tell everyone that Kinahan sexually assaulted her, which kind of turns the tides against him and some of the union members.
Well, hold on. In fact, actually saying that she was sexually assaulted by him does not turn the miners against her. It's that he was acting against the miners. Like, in fact, one of the miners says something. Well, he doesn't know how to handle himself around women so what? Or like something like that. And I was like, damn, dude. Okay.
Yeah.
Kind of fucking brutal. All right.
And then they concoct a plan to essentially have James Earl Jones kill him. And then there is a great sequence of like, there's several instances here where it's so tense, where the editing is like jumping back and forth between like some shit about to pop off and the people with the knowledge to stop it, like doing everything they can. And basically there's a great sequence where several of the miners put together that it wasn't Joe Kinahan doing all these things.
Well, the way they put it, I wanted to take a step back, because the way they figure it out is because of the specific biblical story that Danny tells.
Danny is telling.
But in order for Danny to tell that, he first has to learn that there are these machinations afoot. So while the Baldwin-Felts guys are stirring up shit, along with C.E. Lively, we see the two, gun thugs talking in their room, and Danny is hiding in the closet.
That's right. Yeah.
And overhears about the lie. I think this is a really powerful scene because they discover that Danny is there and they threaten him. And he, in particular, the bigger Baldwin-Felts gun thug, threatens Danny by saying, here's my medal from World War One. I fucking killed them. I'll kill you.
Yeah.
And I made a note of this because that's, I think, kind of a reoccurring theme that we've drawn out time and time again on the podcast is like, Americans go abroad to learn how to kill, and they come and they direct that energy towards other Americans also. Right?
Yeah.
So I took a note of that because I was like, damn. Then Danny is supposed to preach that night. And what does he preach on? He preaches on the story of Joseph and Potiphar. Have you ever seen Joseph in the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat?
No.
No?
I was gonna say yeah, kind of, because when I was like 12 and I went to a Christian summer camp, we went to like a young actors version that was like a scene from it, and I was like, pretty much cultured in the Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat.
So this Andrew Lloyd Webber
I've seen 10-year-olds do a scene from it. So
there are a lot of children. There are a lot of roles for children in the show.
Yeah.
But it's honestly, despite all of my years of church and confirmation and all of this, the reason that I know Joseph's story so well is because there's a recorded film version of Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, which again is the Andrew Lloyd Webber musical, starring Donny Osmond.
Holy shit.
That I have seen, I'm going to go ahead and say 100 times.
Oh my God.
Maybe honestly more than that. So when he starts fucking talking about Potiphar, I'm like, Potiphar was very...
Wait, what were the circumstances that you saw it all because you just liked it so much?
Just our family would watch it. We definitely saw it in the context of church first.
Gotcha, okay.
But we had a VHS of it and then eventually had DVDs of it, and we would just watch it. I mean, my sister and I would watch musicals over and over and over again, and we would sometimes go to like community theater productions with like our mom or our grandma or our aunt or whatever, the gals, whatever. And it was just one of like that Chicago like we just would fucking watch it into the ground until that VHS was done.
Yeah.
And so I am quite familiar with the story of Potiphar's wife
and
coming and hitting on Joseph. And so when he starts telling this, I went, yes, I see. Danny is using Bible verse to inform his fellow West Virginians what's going on, because what we hear earlier is that the Baldwin-Felts man straight up say they do not know the Bible. And they are drunk as fuck in the back of the church, hooting and hollering, not paying attention. But Danny, who speaks the language of his people, communicates to them. Because the whole story of Potiphar and Potiphar's wife and Joseph is that Joseph is pious and devout and is working for Potiphar like as a slave, basically, because his brothers have ejected him because they're jealous of his talents. And he is hit on by Potiphar's wife and rebukes her coming on to him. And so Potiphar's wife then accuses Joseph of raping her to Potiphar,
right? And
then Potiphar casts out Joseph.
Yeah, and that's what causes, I forgot the guy's name, but the one that one of the Union guys who's kind of a side character that takes off running, and that great sequence that literally stops him right before James Earl Jones is going to shoot him. And do you think that Kinahan is supposed to have realized in that moment
that James Earl Jones is going to shoot him?
Was going to kill him? Because they both kind of like start laughing, and there's like a knowing, I don't know, I really like that like just interaction between them. They don't say anything, they just kind of like smiling at each other.
They're like, whoop, this twist
like,
of fate.
That was a close one. Yeah.
There's also like this interesting like coincidence of fate happening, because like Danny has done this. He's informing the guys through his through his sermon,
through the word of the Lord.
Yeah, through the word of the Lord. But also Cephas is like struggling against his injuries. Was shot during a conflict in the woods, because C.E. Lively was sharing information, right? They got turned on at an earlier point in the movie. And he's like, Cephas is fighting to get back to the guys and share, because he knows, he overheard like that it's C.E. Lively is the source of the problem. And so you have all these like kind of converging, like they're all figuring it out simultaneously, right? That they gotta get together. And then from there,
we're gonna talk about the most fucked up scene in the movie.
Lay it on us.
Fuck. So yeah, we have all these kind of points kind of converge where the like battle between I can't remember the name of the goddamn Baldwin-Felts detective agency and the union workers is like reaching a fever pitch when Danny and his friend Hillard Elkins they're just trying to like steal from the mine. They're just like teenage kids that are like fucking around at the mine at night.
They need coal. The camp needs coal. Because like it essentially siege warfare is happening, right? Like their camps, all the people are camping together. All the people who are resisting the mining company are camping together, but they are really running low on food and on resources because Baldwin-Felts guys come through and they take, man, this is what this just like, I feel my fucking temperature rising when they're like, if you paid for anything with credits from the company, that wasn't real money. So the company is taking it now from you, but also the company only pays in these credits. Yeah. So they have nothing. They have very little. So that's why the boys are doing it. They're not just fucking around. They are going to try and get additional coal for the camp.
I'm also glad that our like economic system has changed since then, and we're not just all going into debt based on a system of credit that can just be changed on a whim. Can I also say that my favorite part in the whole goddamn movie is when the hill people come and save the day in the camp. That was my reference in the opening credit when one of the hill people is just mad because the Baldwin-Felts guy scared off all the game, which was so good. But there's so many fucking funny lines in the hill people coming out. And then one was, somebody went, they're genuine hill people. They can be dangerous. There was just so many funny lines. And plus one of them looked like Tom DeLonge from Blink-182.
I did not notice that.
And then he said, if you see any hogs, them probably ours.
Yeah. Well,
appreciate you leave them be.
Because he says like, oh, if you see rabbits or bird, like feel free, basically like feel free to kill those to help yourself, but don't touch our hogs.
Yeah.
But so Danny and Hillard go off to steal some coal, and the Baldwin boys and C.E. Lively catch them. Well, they catch Hillard. Yeah. And they're holding Hillard and they're like interrogating him.
And Danny's watching while like hiding.
Like hiding. Yeah. They don't know that he's there, as far as we know. And it seems that Hillard capitulates. It seems that he spills his guts and shares some information about the union that's going to hurt the union.
Even before then, he put up he got fucked up, and
he was that little dude held out.
Yeah, he had some fortitude.
Out. And then they fucking the bigger Baldwin kills him anyway.
After he gives up the 5 names of like the labor of the organizers in the town, except
this is the organizer. And so you think as the viewer like no anyway, because this young boy has been murdered by these like corporate gun thugs. But then C.E. Lively reveals like the final parting shot of the young man, which is that all the people he named died in that fucking explosion and are not alive anyway.
All burnt up in the mines a year ago or something like that. Yeah. That was a cool moment as well. But
we see Sid, the police chief, carries Hillard's body into the camp.
Oh, that was so fucked. And the mom is just running after him, screaming. Yeah.
And then Sid tells Joe that they've learned that the full force of the Baldwin, so they're sending the whole company, ragtag group of detective shit asses, are coming into town tomorrow.
And that's when we get the full like Gary Cooper high noon sequence of them kind of meeting out on the railroad tracks. And there's so many like beautiful shots. That long ass shot of them slowly just walking up the tracks is so creepy and so like menacing. But yeah, we're gonna have like a old Wild West shootout, and it is a gang of the Baldwin-Felts guys, including our two assholes who have been there the whole time, and they meet with it's the mayor
and Sid, the police chief,
and Sid is. Kinahan's not out there yet.
Not yet, no. It's just the two of them, and they say, Baldwin boys say that they have a warrant for Sid's arrest.
Yeah.
If he interferes. And
that's when he just...
Sid says,
fuck
this
you!
shit!
And he just opens fire on him, which it's really sad, but... So the mayor gets shot in the course of this, and I think is mortally wounded, right? But at one point after he gets shot,
he's laying on the ground.
He goes, I just wanted to talk to him. He's like, basically, why'd you start shooting, you asshole? I was the first one to get it.
Yeah, and Sid is firing away. And then there's my favorite shot in the movie, which is, so Elma is the name of the woman that runs the storehouse. That's Danny's mom. Yes.
Yeah, the clothesline.
She is standing behind a clothesline, and the bigger Baldwin boy that we've seen harass these guys,
the one that's really been like terrorizing her and her son,
right, and terrorizing her specifically, runs up on her, and she fires a shotgun into his belly, and you see the blood and splatter hit on the other side of the clothesline where another white sheet is, and it's just a really effective moment.
And you don't ever see the shotgun, I don't think, because she's standing in like 3 or 4 rows of clothes.
You see it afterwards,
right?
You
see like the blast of it, and then you see him like fall through the sheets. Yeah, that shit was awesome. I love that. Also, the really like haunting moment is the mom of Hillard Elkin, like after the dust settles, is just standing over that one dude's dead body, just shooting him.
Also, Hickey is the name of the big boy Baldwin, and Griggs is the name of the one that she is just Hillard's mom is just fucking
blank-facedly shooting him in the head over and over again. But
then we see that Joe gets shot.
Yes, he does, on the steps of the courthouse or something?
No, that's Sid. We hear that Sid later is killed on the courthouse steps. No, Joe's just like coming around the corner, basically.
Yeah, that's so fucked up too, because it's a kind of a slow reveal that he's a casualty in all the mayhem, and it's yeah,
I think it's something that kind of speaks to that melancholy that you were talking about at the beginning, where it's like. And again, I think to me also speaks to kind of the Western nature of it. It's not even like this. It's not an action movie shootout where you see the hero fall down. It's like the messiness of wanton destruction has also taken a secondary victim.
Yeah.
That's kind of like cast to the side.
Yeah, he is like the tragic hero that kind of, as for the story, like has to die or whatever. I mean, I know it's based on a true story, but it's him and the mayor are amongst the dead. And then there's a great shot too where one of the Baldwin-Felts guys is like escaping after they've successfully, even though several of them died, they've successfully held off the like hired guns. And Danny can't shoot the dude that's like fleeing through the river is a really good shot too. Yeah,
and we also know that like C.E. Lively makes it out of the situation, and in the Criterion essay that I mentioned before, the author talks about how like C.E. Lively, that is like a real guy, like that is a named specific man that was actually part of this situation, and he died unpunished. Like like went through all of that, lived a life. I think he like even had a little bit of like a political career, and it is a thing that is like challenging to wrestle with, but it's one of the things I like most about this movie is that it is very clear-eyed about like social change is not like, again, white hats win, black hats lose.
Right.
Like it is a lot
it's a
dirtier
fucking fight,
and messier
and
than
that. Yeah.
And sometimes like the fucking bad guys continue on and don't pay any immediate or meaningful consequences. Now we know their soul doesn't rest easy.
Yeah,
hopefully
we can add C.E. Lively to our gang of Hutton Gibson, Mel Gibson's father, of assholes who lived way too long. I spit on your grave,
etc. And then we do hear that narration at the very end that Sid was killed on the courthouse steps, and it was the start of the Coldfield Wars. We also at that point in time learn that the narration that we've been hearing is older Danny.
Yeah.
That Danny lived, and we eventually see him kind of full circle in the mines, laboring away.
Yep.
Something I wanted to bring up, I kind of touched on this a little bit at the beginning, of that I do think there's some really interesting stuff going on in this movie in terms of like kind of some multicultural blending, like speaking to or trying to depict pluralism and the conflict, but also like the power of that. And one of my favorite things about the movie is there is I think two scenes, one scene where it's a little longer, where we hear that syncretism through music. Where we hear
at the camp where they have the musical break. Yeah, that's
where there's
great.
like this musical break where we hear that like the Italian leader is playing like a small guitar or something in a way that is unique to, you know, his cultural heritage.
Yeah.
And we hear one of the black workers is playing a harmonica, and we hear the kind of plaintive singing of the like kind of nasally intonation of the West Virginia miners.
Yeah.
And there's just like beautiful blending of the people's power, the people's will, and also the people's music.
Yeah. I love those musical sequences. There was another great one at the funeral too, where just that woman singing, I don't know what that style of like Appalachian,
that's what I'm
like
saying. It's kind of like nasally
hillbilly yodeling is but that shit was great too. But yeah, I just wanted to like close a little bit too on something that I realized that is like the, you know, what's old is new again as I was reading about this. But one of the most famous union busting organizations, like the Baldwin-Felts Detective Agency, which I looked up, had closed. It was shut down by like the 1930s. But the Pinkertons, who were like one of the most infamous union busting organizations. Well, turns out, I didn't know this, they're still around. That same agency is now Securitas USA, which made headlines fairly recently for some of the like bullish tactics they did when the workers at a place called Frontier Communications in 2018 started striking. So yeah, I did want to just touch on like the union busting tactics now, because those tactics are clearly still around, but I think they've a lot of the union busting tactics have obviously gotten more political and less brute force from the time of like Matewan or whatever.
Right. Like the surveillance state, right, is so much more advanced that it acts as a repressive tool, like as a like almost like a preventative measure, right, before we even get to those other like secondary forces. Yeah.
And I've mentioned this several times on the podcast, but I'll mention it again because it's still ongoing. But the union that I'm a part of is like currently in the midst of being completely fucked over by two huge union busting laws, one of which DeSantis introduced 2 years ago that made it illegal for union dues to be deducted from your like employer for like before you get your paycheck. So basically our union had to redo how they do all of the due collection, which dropped our percentage from like 51% membership down to like 30. And then arbitrarily, so our union has to have, I think, and that actually, I say our union, he did that our union. No, he did that to unions in Florida. It wasn't just ours, but he also made it where to have bargaining rights, it was that you had to have 50% membership, and now it is at 60, arbitrarily increased. So we lost a ton of members from the first bill and now have to gain even more than we had before with the second. So we have to, the union that I'm part of has to get, we're at 38% membership and have to get to 60 in like 2 months. So
yeah, it's again, as the like opportunities as technology in the administrative state has expanded, it just multiplies the opportunities to chisel away. But we know that when presented with information and consciousness raising and other workers who see how the union benefits them, that people can be mobilized. So
hell yeah.
Keep fighting the good fight, man.
Oh yeah. And do we have anything else to add for Matewan?
The last thing I just want to say about Matewan specifically is that I did, it was mentioned in the Criterion essay, and I did look up and confirm the woman who is primarily singing in this movie, Hazel Dickens, in that, like I said, 30 Way, is the same
from Harlan County.
So obviously both take place in or cover.
Wait, is
West
that
Virginia.
her in the movie?
No, but the soundtrack,
the voice.
Yes, the voice is her.
Okay. I was gonna say, oh no, it couldn't be. Oh, I guess it could have been her. She'd have been old as hell, but yeah, because Harlan County was 70s. Yeah.
But yeah, so I just wanted to put that out.
That's cool.
I'm
That's
always,
awesome.
A fan of for us to try and continue to pick up the threads, like where are the commonalities or the patterns that we see across things, and her voice and the resonance calls throughout the decades. And then are you cool with me saying that movie?
Yeah.
Next. So for our next episode, we're going to cover Earth Mama, which came out last year. So want to cover this. One, we have not covered a movie that was directed by a Black woman, which Earth Mama is.
Okay. Yeah.
And it is also contemporary, which I like. We've been doing some older stuff as of late, so I think that's good. And it is also pretty accessible. It's an A24 release that came out, like I said, last year, and it's for sure available on Paramount Plus. So join us in watching that if you want to watch it along with us. So when the episode comes out, you're to see, and that we're gonna dig into how the criminal legal system affects families, particularly Black families. So
hell yeah,
let's get it.
I'm excited to see this one. I didn't know much about it before.
It's also our 33 episode, and it should come out like within a day or two of my 33rd birthday.
Ooh,
so that's fun.
March 3rd would be like on March 3rd.
Is it? Well, no, this is coming out on March 3rd.
Oh fuck! I got totally confused for a second. I thought we were still talking about this episode.
I was like, wait, what?
Damn, we good thing we could have opened up some sort of wormhole.
Let's see, March 3rd. It will come. That episode will come out 2 days after my birthday.
Oh, happy birthday! Before and after.
Yeah, I'll make you say it again next time.
All right, well, we'll get y'all on the next one.